You think money protects you. You think a first-class ticket guarantees you a seat. Think again. When Preston Holloway boarded Flight 402 to London, he thought he owned the sky. He saw a young black woman in a hoodie sitting in seat 1A, and made the biggest mistake of his life. He judged a book by its cover. He didn't know that the woman he was trying to bully off the plane wasn't just a passenger. She was the reason the plane was even allowed to fly. What happened next grounded a Boeing 707, destroyed $1 billion merger, and proved that karma doesn't just knock, it kicks the door down. This is the story of how one man's arrogance cost him everything in seconds. The rain at JFK International Airport was relentless, drumming against the reinforced glass of Terminal 4 like thousands of nervous fingers. It was the kind of grey, oppressive Tuesday afternoon that made seasoned travelers irritable and first-time flyers anxious. Inside the exclusive Stratton Airlines first-class lounge, the air smelled of expensive espresso and even more expensive perfume. But Naomi Sterling wasn't drinking champagne or networking. She was sitting in the far corner, tucked away in a wing-back leather chair, wearing a charcoal grey oversized hoodie, black leggings and worn-out sneakers. To the untrained eye, she looked like a college student flying standby on her parents' miles. She was exhausted. The last 72 hours had been a blur of boardrooms in Silicon Valley and emergency crisis meetings in D.C. At 29, Naomi was the youngest female billionaire in the biotech sphere, the silent architect behind Ether Systems, the company that had just patented a revolutionary synthetic fuel filtration system used by half the commercial jets in the world. But today she didn't want to be a CEO. She just wanted to sleep. She had booked seat 1A specifically for the privacy. "Ms. Sterling?" Naomi looked up. A lounge attendant, a young man named Leo, stood there with a fresh bottle of water. He spoke in a hushed tone, the way people speak to royalty or volatile explosives. "They're ready for pre-boarding, ma'am. Since you requested the discreet entry, we can take you through the side door now." "Thanks, Leo," Naomi said, pulling her hood up. She grabbed her backpack, a battered canvas thing that actually held a laptop worth more than a luxury car. "Just me today. No entourage." "Understood. Have a safe flight." Naomi boarded the Boeing 707-300ER before anyone else. The cabin was pristine, bathed in soft, ambient mood lighting that shifted from calming violet to a warm sunset orange. Seat 1A was a sanctuary, a fully enclosed suite with sliding privacy doors. She threw her bag into the overhead bin, kicked off her sneakers, and curled up in the massive seat with her noise-cancelling headphones on. She didn't even turn them on. She just wanted the silence. She closed her eyes, letting the hum of the aircraft's auxiliary power lull her. 10 minutes passed. Then came the thundering of footsteps. The rest of the first-class passengers began to trickle in. It was the usual mix, a tired-looking diplomat, 2 influencers live-streaming their champagne toast, and an elderly couple holding hands. And then he arrived. Preston Holloway didn't walk. He marched. He was a man who took up space on purpose. Wearing a bespoke navy suit that screamed Savile Row, with a Patek Philippe watch catching the cabin light, Preston looked like the caricature of Wall Street success. He was on his way to London to close a merger for Centurion Holdings, a deal that would secure his promotion to managing partner. His adrenaline was high, his patience was low, and his entitlement was off the charts. He scanned his boarding pass, then frowned at the row numbers. He looked at 1A. Then he looked at his pass again. Seat 1A. He stopped dead in the aisle. Naomi had her eyes closed. She didn't see him looming over her, but she smelled him, an overpowering wave of musk and cedarwood cologne that made her nose twitch. "Excuse me," a voice barked, cutting through her headphones. Naomi didn't move immediately. She assumed he was talking to a flight attendant. "Hey." The voice was louder now, accompanied by a sharp tap on her shoulder. Naomi flinched. She slid her headphones down around her neck and looked up. A red-faced man with licked-back blonde hair was glaring down at her as if she were a stain on the carpet. "Can I help you?" Naomi asked, her voice raspy from lack of sleep. "You're in my seat," Preston snapped, waving his boarding pass in her face. 1A. Move. Naomi blinked, confused. She reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out her own crumpled boarding pass. She glanced at it. 1A. Naomi Sterling. "I think there's a mistake," Naomi said, calmly holding hers up. "I'm in 1A. Preston laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was a sharp, incredulous bark. He looked around the cabin, trying to make eye contact with other passengers, seeking an audience for his indignation. "Look, sweetheart," Preston said, dropping his voice to a condescending sneer. "I don't know how you snuck in here, staff discount upgrade lottery, whatever, but this is a full-fare, first-class ticket. I specifically reserved the bulkhead suite. So why don't you grab your little backpack and head back to economy, where you belong, before I call the stewardess?" Naomi's spine stiffened. The exhaustion evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp alertness. She had dealt with men like Preston in boardrooms for 10 years. They usually underestimated her until she bought their companies out from under them. "I paid for this seat," Naomi said, her voice steady. "And I'm not moving." Preston's face turned a shade of crimson that clashed with the ambient lighting. "You paid, please. You look like you're delivering Uber Eats, not flying international." He turned around and snapped his fingers loudly. "Attendant, hey, we have a squatter situation here." The drama had officially begun. Chloe, the lead flight attendant for the first-class cabin, hurried over. She was a veteran of Stratton Airlines, having flown the New York-London route for 15 years. She had seen it all: drunk celebrities, nervous flyers, illicit affairs in the lavatory. But she knew trouble when she saw it, and the man in the navy suit was radiating it. "Is there a problem, sir?" Chloe asked, her smile professional but tight. "Yes, there is a massive problem," Preston spat, pointing a manicured finger at Naomi. "This girl is in my seat. I have boarding pass 1A. I want her removed immediately." Chloe looked at Preston, then at Naomi. She recognized Naomi instantly. Not because Naomi was famous in the tabloids, but because the flight manifest had flagged seat 1A as VIP. High priority. The briefing notes had simply said, "Ms. Sterling, do not disturb." Chloe turned to Preston. "May I see your boarding pass, sir?" Preston shoved his phone screen in her face. "Read it and weep." Chloe adjusted her glasses. She looked at the screen. Then she looked closer. "Sir," Chloe said gently, "this is seat 1A on flight 402. Exactly. For tomorrow." The silence in the cabin was deafening. The influencer couple stopped filming. The diplomat looked over the top of his newspaper. Preston froze. He snatched the phone back. He swiped at the screen violently. "Don't be ridiculous. My assistant booked this. It's for today, Tuesday the 27th. "Today is Tuesday," Chloe said, maintaining her composure. "But your ticket is dated for Wednesday the 28th. You're 24 hours early, sir." Naomi let out a small, tired sigh and went to put her headphones back on. "Mystery solved. Have a nice flight tomorrow." That was the wrong thing to say. Humiliation is a powerful drug, and for a narcissist like Preston Holloway, it was toxic. Being wrong was bad enough. Being wrong in front of a nobody in a hoodie while the flight crew looked at him with pity was intolerable. He couldn't back down. His ego wouldn't let him. "This is a system error," Preston shouted, his voice cracking. "I am a platinum medallion member. I fly this airline 3 times a month. Do you know who I am? I'm Preston Holloway. I'm closing a deal that's worth more than this entire plane." "Sir, please lower your voice," Chloe said, stepping between him and Naomi's suite. "We can check at the gate if there are other seats available, but seat 1A is occupied by a paying customer." "Paying customer?" Preston sneered, leaning over Chloe's shoulder to glare at Naomi. Don't make me laugh. Look at her. She's probably trafficking drugs in that backpack. Have you checked her bag? I bet she's a mule." A gasp rippled through the cabin. Naomi stood up. She wasn't tall, maybe 5'6", but the way she unfolded herself from the seat had the coiled grace of a predator. She didn't shout. She didn't scream. She simply removed her headphones, placed them gently on the console, and looked Preston dead in the eye. "You need to stop talking," Naomi said. Her voice was ice water. "Right now." "Or what?" Preston challenged, stepping closer, invading her personal space. "You going to call your gang? You going to pull a knife? Sir, step back." Chloe ordered, her hand reaching for the interphone to call the cockpit. "I'm not stepping back until this fraud is off the plane," Preston screamed. He reached out and grabbed the strap of Naomi's backpack, which was resting on the ottoman. "Let's see what you're hiding, huh?" He yanked the bag. Naomi's reflexes were instant. She grabbed the other end of the strap. "Let go of my property." "Security," Preston yelled, trying to twist the bag away from her. "She assaulted me. Did you see that she assaulted me?" The bag ripped open. It wasn't drugs that fell out. It was a stack of files marked "Confidential," a heavy metallic prototype drive, and a passport. But Preston didn't look at the items. In his rage, he shoved Naomi backward. She stumbled her hip, checking the corner of the heavy seat console. It wasn't a hard fall, but it was physical contact. "That's it," said a deep voice from the front galley. The cockpit door had opened. Captain Miller, a man with grey hair and 4 stripes on his shoulder, stepped into the first-class cabin. He looked like the kind of pilot who had flown through hurricanes without spilling his coffee. "What is going on back here?" Captain Miller demanded. Preston straightened his suit jacket, breathless but triumphant. "Captain, thank God. This woman is violent. She's in my seat, she's refusing to leave, and she just attacked me. I want her arrested." Captain Miller looked at Preston. Then he looked at Naomi, who was brushing off her hoodie, looking more annoyed than hurt. Miller's eyes widened slightly when he saw Naomi. He didn't just recognize the passenger manifest name. He recognized her. He walked past Preston and stopped in front of Naomi. "Miss Sterling," the captain said, his tone shifting to one of immense respect. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine, Captain," Naomi said, her jaw tight. "But this man assaulted me and attempted to steal my property." Preston scoffed. "Oh, save the act. Captain, get this trash off the flight so we can take off. I have a meeting in London in 7 hours. Captain Miller turned slowly to face Preston. The look on the captain's face was not one of customer service. It was the look of a man who was responsible for a $300 million machine and 200 lives. "You're right about one thing, sir," Captain Miller said quietly. "Someone is getting off this plane." Preston smirked. "Good. Glad to see some competence." "Grab your bags, Mr. Holloway," the captain said. Preston's smirk faltered. "Excuse me, you heard me?" Miller said, crossing his arms. "You assaulted a passenger. You're disruptive. And you're a flight risk. You're deplaning now." "You can't be serious." Preston laughed, looking around for support. "You're kicking me off." For her. "Do you know how much money I spend with this airline?" "I don't care if you bought the airline," Miller said. "Get off my plane." Preston's face went purple. He lunged forward, poking the captain in the chest. "Listen to me, you glorified bus driver. I am not moving. If you don't fly this plane right now, I will sue you. I will sue this airline, and I will personally ensure you never fly a kite again." Miller didn't flinch. He just reached for his radio. "Tower, this is Stratton 402. We have a level 3 security threat in the cabin. Requesting airport police to the gate immediately." "You're bluffing," Preston hissed. "I never bluff," Miller replied. "And just so you know, the flight is grounded." "What?" Preston blinked. "Nobody is going to London today," Miller said, his voice carrying through the silent cabin. "Not until the police finish their report. You just grounded a commercial airliner, Mr. Holloway. Do you have any idea what the federal fines are for that?" The color drained from Preston's face, but the real twist hadn't even dropped yet. Naomi picked up her phone. She tapped the screen twice and held it to her ear. The cabin was so quiet, everyone could hear the dial tone. "Who are you calling?" Preston asked, a flicker of genuine fear finally entering his eyes. "Your lawyer." Naomi looked at him, her expression unreadable. "No," she said softly. "I'm calling the CEO of Stratton Airlines. His name is Arthur. He's my godfather." She paused, then spoke into the phone. "Uncle Artie, it's Naomi." "Yeah, I'm at JFK. We have a problem. You might want to check who Centurion Holdings banks with, because I think I'm about to pull my company's accounts." The blood didn't just drain from Preston's face, it evaporated. Centurion Holdings, his firm. The firm he was trying to become a partner at. The firm whose biggest liquidity provider was... He looked at the girl in the hoodie. You're Naomi Sterling," he whispered. "Sit down, Preston," Naomi said, ending the call. "The police are on their way, and you're going to want to be seated for what comes next." The silence in the first-class cabin of Flight 402 was heavy, broken only by the hum of the air recyclers and the distant rhythmic thumping of heavy boots on the jet bridge. Preston Holloway was still standing, his chest heaving, his face a mask of disbelief and lingering rage. He looked at Naomi Sterling, who was calmly typing on her phone, then at Captain Miller, who stood like a stone sentinel by the cockpit door. "You can't do this," Preston muttered, his voice shaking. "I have rights. I have a meeting. You don't understand. If I miss this meeting, the deal collapses." "You should have thought about that before you put your hands on a passenger," Captain Miller said. He didn't blink. "And before you grounded my aircraft." The sound of the boots got louder. 2 officers from the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey stepped onto the plane. They were imposing figures in dark blue uniforms, rain glistening on their shoulders. One was an older sergeant with a face carved from granite, the nameplate reading SGT, Kowalski. The other was younger Officer Mendez, who already had his hand resting near his belt. "Captain," Sergeant Kowalski nodded. "We got a call about a level 3 disturbance. That's the one." Captain Miller gestured to Preston. "Passenger became belligerent, assaulted a fellow passenger, attempted to steal property, and refused a direct order to deplane. I want him removed and charged." Preston straightened his blazer, attempting to summon the ghosts of his usual authority. He forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Officers, thank God you're here. This is a massive misunderstanding. The captain is overreacting to a simple seating dispute. I am a managing partner at Centurion Holdings. I'm happy to sort this out, but I really need to get to London. Kowalski looked Preston up and down. He looked at the Patek Philippe watch, the Italian loafers, and the sneer that Preston couldn't quite hide. Then he looked at Naomi, who was still sitting quietly clutching her torn backpack. "Ma'am," Kowalski asked, "did this man touch you?" Naomi looked up. Her eyes were dry, but her voice was steely. "He grabbed my bag, ripped it open, and shoved me into the console. My hip is bruised." "She's lying," Preston shouted, pointing a finger. "She's a squatter." "She doesn't belong here." "Sir, put your hand down," Mendez warned, stepping forward. "I will not," Preston snapped. "You work for the public, which means you work for me. I pay your salary. Now get this woman off the plane so I can say—" "Sir, turn around and place your hands behind your back," Kowalski said. His tone wasn't a request. It was an order. Preston froze. "What? You are under arrest for assault battery and interfering with a flight crew. Turn around. Now." "You cannot arrest me," Preston shrieked. The veneer of civilization finally cracked completely. "I am Preston Holloway. I know the police commissioner. I will have your badges. I will sue this entire airport." He took a step toward the officers, his fists clenched. That was his final mistake. Officer Mendez didn't hesitate. In one fluid motion, he grabbed Preston's right wrist, twisted it behind his back, and slammed him chest first against the bulkhead wall. The sound of expensive fabric scraping against plastic echoed through the cabin. "Stop resisting," Mendez shouted. "Get off me! This is a suit worth more than your life!" Preston howled, thrashing against the hold. Click, click. The handcuffs went on tight, not the comfortable kind. The metal bit into Preston's wrists, pinching the skin. "Preston Holloway," Kowalski recited the Miranda rights from memory. His voice bored and practiced. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." As they hauled him upright, Preston looked wild. His hair was disheveled, his tie crooked. He scanned the cabin looking for sympathy. He found none. The influencer couple in seat 3A and 3B were standing up their phones, held high. They were recording everything. The red REC dots were like sniper scopes trained on his reputation. "Get those cameras out of my face," Preston yelled, struggling as the officers marched him toward the door. "I'll sue you too. You're all dead. You hear me, dead. Let's go, Rockefeller," Kowalski grunted, shoving him forward. The walk of shame was excruciating. Because the plane was grounded, the jet bridge was still connected, but the terminal gate area was packed with passengers waiting for the next flight, along with the overflow from Flight 402, who were now realizing they weren't going anywhere. As Preston was dragged out of the jet bridge and into the terminal, a sea of eyes turned to him. "Is that the guy?" someone whispered. "Yeah, he's the one who fought the girl. What a loser." Preston Holloway, the man who prided himself on exclusivity, on being separated from the masses by velvet ropes and gold cards, was now being paraded in front of hundreds of people in handcuffs. He saw a mother cover her child's eyes. He saw teenagers pointing and laughing. And then he saw the screens. The gate information display for Flight 402 had changed. The text on time was gone. In its place, in flashing red letters, "Cancelled. Security incident." He had done this, and everyone knew it. Back on the plane, the silence returned, but the tension remained. Captain Miller sighed and picked up the PA microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the captain. As you can see, the security threat has been removed. However, due to the nature of the incident and the need for police statements, this aircraft is being taken out of service. Flight 402 is cancelled. Gate agents are ready to rebook you. We apologize for the behavior of that passenger, and we thank you for your patience." Naomi stood up. She picked up the spilled files and the prototype drive, shoving them back into her ruined bag. "Ms. Sterling." Chloe, the flight attendant, appeared with a plastic bag filled with ice. "For your hip. I'm so sorry." "Not your fault, Chloe," Naomi said, offering a tired smile. "You handled him well." Are you really who he said you were?" Chloe asked, dropping her voice. "Naomi Sterling." Naomi slung the backpack over one shoulder. She looked at the empty seat where Preston had been sitting minutes ago. "I'm just a passenger who wanted a nap," Naomi said. "But now I'm the woman who is going to ruin his life." The holding cell at JFK's Port Authority precinct was nothing like the first-class lounge. It was a 10-by-10 room with cinder-block walls painted a depressing shade of institutional beige, a stainless steel toilet, and a metal vent bolted to the floor. It smelled of stale coffee and floor cleaner. Preston sat on the bench shivering. They had taken his shoelaces, his belt, and his tie. Suicide prevention protocols. Without his accessories, he looked smaller, deflated. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and there was a scuff mark on his Italian loafers. He had been processing for 2 hours. Fingerprints, mugshot, the humiliation of having to turn to the left, then the right, while holding a placard with a booking number. But his mind was still racing, fueled by adrenaline and denial. "This is a fixable problem," he told himself. "I'm a rich white man in America. I have a lawyer. I have connections. This is just a delay." He needed to call Harrison Cole. Harrison was the CEO of Centurion Holdings. He was a shark, a man who ate weakness for breakfast, but he valued Preston. Preston was the closer. Preston was the one bringing in the London merger. Harrison would be angry about the delay, sure, but once he heard that Stratton Airlines had profiled his star employee, he would unleash the company's legal team. They would own the airline by Friday. "Holloway." Officer Mendez opened the heavy steel door. "Your lawyer isn't here yet, but you get your phone call." Preston stood up, smoothing his jacket. "Finally. Hand me my phone." "Payphone in the hall." Mendez pointed. 3 minutes. Preston scoffed but walked out. He dialed Harrison's private line. He knew it by heart. It rang once, twice. "This is Cole," the voice answered, clipped cold. "Harrison." "It's Preston," Preston said, letting out a breath of relief. "Listen, you are not going to believe what is happening. I'm at JFK. I'm being detained by some rent-a-cops. The airline completely screwed up, double-booked my seat, and when I stood my ground, they had me arrested. It's insane. You need to call the legal department and get a writ or whatever to get me out. I can still make a red-eye to London if we hurry." Silence. There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. "Harrison, are you there? You're on speaker, Preston," Harrison said. His voice sounded different, hollow. "I have the entire board of directors in the room with me." Preston's stomach dropped. The board? Why?" "Preston," Harrison said, "have you checked the internet in the last hour?" "No, they took my phone. What does the internet have to do with this? You're trending, Preston. #1 on Twitter, #1 on TikTok. Someone on that plane, some influencer with 4 million followers live-streamed the whole thing. The video has 12 million views in 90 minutes. Preston felt the blood drain from his extremities. "So what?" "It's just a video. I can explain." "Shut up," Harrison roared. The sound distorted over the phone line. You cannot explain this. I just watched you call a black woman a mule and assault her. I watched you scream at a captain. I watched you act like a rabid animal." She started it, Preston pleaded, desperation creeping in. "She was in my seat." "She's nobody." "Nobody." Harrison laughed, a dark, bitter sound. "Do you know who that nobody is? We just got off the phone with Arthur Stratton, the CEO of the airline. He called to personally inform us that due to the incident involving his goddaughter, Stratton Airlines is cancelling their corporate contract with Centurion. That's a $40 million loss, Preston." Preston leaned against the wall, his knees shaking. "Goddaughter? But that's not the worst part," Harrison continued, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "The woman you assaulted, that is Naomi Sterling, the founder of Ether Systems." The name hit Preston like a physical blow. Ether Systems, the London merger, the deal he was flying to close. It was a merger between Centurion and a European logistics giant, but the entire value of the merger hinged on an exclusive licensing agreement for a new fuel filtration system, a system patented by Ether Systems. "You know the London deal?" Harrison asked rhetorically. "The one you were going to close, the one that was going to make you a partner." "Harrison, please." "Naomi Sterling just called the European partners personally," Harrison said. "She told them that as long as Centurion Holdings is involved, Ether pulls the license. The deal is dead, Preston. The Europeans walked away 10 minutes ago." "No," Preston whispered. "No, you can't. I can fix this. You cost this firm $2 billion in potential revenue in less than 5 minutes, Harrison said. You are fired. For cause. Your equity is revoked, and our general counsel is currently drafting a press release distancing the firm from your repugnant personal behavior. We are feeding you to the wolves, Preston. Don't call this number again." Click. The line went dead. Preston stared at the receiver. The dial tone buzzed in his ear like a wasp. Fired. The deal dead. His equity gone. "Time's up," Officer Mendez said, appearing behind him. Preston dropped the phone. It dangled by its metal cord, swinging back and forth. He walked back into the cell like a zombie. He sat on the metal bench. But the nightmare wasn't over. Across the airport in the VIP terminal, where private jets berthed, Naomi Sterling was sitting in a plush leather chair. She had changed into fresh clothes, a sharp black blazer and jeans. She was holding an ice pack to her hip with one hand and a glass of whiskey with the other. Her godfather, Arthur Stratton, a silver-haired lion of a man, sat opposite her. He looked furious, but the fury was directed at the world, not her. "I'm pressing charges, Uncle Artie," Naomi said calmly. "Civil and criminal. I want him to hurt." "He will," Arthur promised. "I've already banned him for life, and I shared his name with the Alliance. He won't be able to fly on any major carrier in the Western Hemisphere. He's taking a bus if he wants to go anywhere." Naomi took a sip of whiskey. She pulled out her phone. She opened Twitter. The hashtag #FirstClassRacist was the top trend worldwide. The thumbnail was Preston's red screaming face. She scrolled down. The internet detectives had already found everything. His address on the Upper East Side, his college fraternity photos, his ex-wife's blog posts about his temper. "The internet works fast," Naomi murmured. "It does," Arthur said. "Are you okay to fly? I can have the Gulf Stream prepped in 30 minutes. London is waiting." Naomi looked out the window at the rainy tarmac. "Yeah, I'm okay." She stood up, wincing slightly. "But before we go," Naomi said, a dangerous glint in her eye, "I need to make one more stop. I want to see him." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "The police station. Naomi, you don't need to do that." "I don't need to," Naomi agreed. "I want to. He asked me if I knew who he was. I think it's only fair I go and tell him exactly who I am." Arthur smiled. It was a vicious smile. "I'll have the driver bring the car around." The karma wasn't finished. It was about to get personal. The interrogation room at the Port Authority precinct was a vacuum of joy. It was a windowless box with a two-way mirror, a metal table bolted to the floor, and flickering fluorescent lights that buzzed like a dying insect. Preston Halloway sat hunched over the table. He had been waiting for 3 hours. Every time the door handle clicked, he straightened up, expecting his high-priced corporate attorney, Richard Hayes, to walk in with a frantic apology and a release form. But when the heavy steel door finally swung open, it wasn't Richard. It was Naomi Sterling. She walked in with the casual confidence of someone who owned the building. The captain of the precinct held the door for her, then closed it, leaving them alone. Naomi didn't sit. She stood by the door, leaning against the wall, watching him. Preston blinked his eyes, adjusting to the harsh light. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Without the hoodie in her sharp blazer, she looked every inch the billionaire tech mogul. But her eyes were the same dark, intelligent, and currently filled with a terrifying calmness. "You," Preston croaked. His throat was dry. "You can't be in here. This is highly irregular." "I have a good lawyer," Naomi said dryly, "and the police commissioner is a fan of my company's drone technology." He made an exception. Preston swallowed hard. His survival instinct kicked in. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate, slimy charm. He stood up slowly, offering a weak smile. "Ms. Sterling," he began, his voice trembling slightly. "Look, I want to apologize. I truly do. We got off on the wrong foot. It was a stressful day, the rain, the merger. I wasn't myself. If I had known who you were—" "Stop," Naomi said. She didn't shout. She just held up a hand. "That's the problem, Preston. If you had known who I was." She pushed off the wall and walked to the table. She placed her hands on the cold metal surface and leaned in. "If I were the daughter of a senator, you would have been polite. If I were a famous actress, you would have asked for a selfie. But because I looked like a tired girl in a hoodie, you decided I was trash. You decided I was something you could scrape off your shoe." I was just stressed," Preston stammered. "It was a misunderstanding about the seat assignment." "It wasn't a misunderstanding," Naomi corrected him. "It was a power play. You wanted to feel big, so you tried to make me feel small. And now you're going to see what real power looks like." Preston's face hardened. "Look, you've had your fun. You got me fired. Harrison told me. Okay, I lost my job. Are you happy? But you can't keep me here. My lawyer is coming. I'll make bail. I'll sue you for defamation. That video. It's out of context." Naomi laughed. It was a genuine laugh, but it chilled the room. "You really don't get it, do you?" She pulled a folded piece of paper from her blazer pocket and slid it across the table. Preston looked at it. It was a printout of an email. "What is this? Read the sender," Naomi said. Preston squinted. "From legal@centurionholdings.com to nsterling@ethersystems.com. That's my old firm." "Your old firm just sent me a settlement offer," Naomi explained. "To avoid Ether Systems pulling our technology license, Centurion has agreed to fully cooperate with the prosecution. They are handing over your corporate expense reports, your HR complaints, And this is my favorite part, the internal memos where you bragged about crushing competitors using unethical tactics. Preston felt the floor sway beneath him. They can't do that. Attorney-client privilege. Not when the client commits a crime, Naomi said. And you committed several today. Assault, battery, interference with a flight crew, but the DA is looking at adding hate crime to the list given the racial slurs you used. I never used a slur, Preston shrieked. I said mule, that's not a slur. Tell that to the jury, Naomi said. But here is the reality, Preston. I didn't come here to gloat. I came here to give you a heads up. Because I believe in transparency. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. I just got off the phone with the bank that holds the mortgage on your penthouse in Tribeca. Did you know that most jumbo mortgages have a morality clause? It allows the bank to call in the full loan immediately if the borrower is involved in a scandal that threatens the asset's value or the bank's reputation. Preston's eyes bulged. My apartment. You can't touch my apartment. I didn't touch it, Naomi said, stepping back. I just forwarded the video to the bank's risk management officer. They initiated the foreclosure process 10 minutes ago. Since you're unemployed as of this afternoon, I doubt you can refinance. Preston slumped back onto the bench. He looked like a man who had been hollowed out. Everything, his career, his reputation, his home, was gone. In 4 hours. Why? Preston whispered, tears of rage and self-pity welling in his eyes. Why are you doing this? You have everything. Why destroy me? Naomi paused at the door. She looked back at him, her expression somber. Because, Preston, there are thousands of people like you, people who think the world belongs to them and everyone else is just renting space. Usually you get away with it. You yell at waiters, you bully subordinates, you cut lines, and nothing happens. Today something happened. She knocked on the steel door. Enjoy the flight, Mr. Halloway. I hear the food in county jail is terrible. The next morning, the Manhattan Criminal Court at 100 Center Street was a circus. Usually an arraignment for assault is a routine, boring affair, but not when the defendant is the first-class racist trending globally. The sidewalk outside the courthouse was jammed with satellite trucks, paparazzi and protesters holding signs that read, "Ground him and no-fly list for hate." Inside courtroom, Part AR1 was packed. The air conditioner was broken, and the room smelled of sweat and old paper. Preston was led in. He hadn't slept. He was still wearing his navy suit, but it was a wreck, wrinkled, stained with sweat, and collarless because they had kept his tie. His blonde hair was matted. He looked like a ghost of the man who had marched onto Flight 402. His lawyer, Richard Hayes, looked exhausted. He had been trying to do damage control all night, but the avalanche was too heavy. "All rise," the bailiff bellowed. Judge Beatrice Solomon took the bench. She was a stern woman in her 60s, with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked at the docket, then at Preston. Her expression was one of profound distaste. Docket number 2024. The clerk read, People of the State of New York versus Preston Halloway. Charges assault in the 3rd degree, harassment in the 2nd degree, unlawful imprisonment and interference with a flight crew. How do you plead? Judge Solomon asked. Not guilty, Your Honor. Preston said, his voice cracking. The Assistant District Attorney, a sharp young man named Lopez, stood up. He didn't just want a conviction. He wanted a headline. Your Honor, the people request bail be set at $500,000. The defendant is a wealthy flight risk with international connections. He attempted to hijack a commercial flight through intimidation. He has shown zero remorse. And frankly, for his own safety, he shouldn't be on the street. The public outcry is significant. 500,000. Richard Hayes jumped up. Your Honor, that is absurd. My client is a respected businessman with strong ties to the community. He has never been arrested. We request release on recognizance. Judge Solomon peered over her glasses at Preston. Mr. Hayes, I watched the video this morning with my coffee, the judge said dryly. Your client grounded a Boeing 777 because he didn't like his seatmate. That doesn't scream ties to the community to me. That screams entitled narcissist. Bail is set at $250,000 cash or bond. Next case. Preston's knees buckled. $250,000. He had money, but his accounts were frozen by the pending investigations. It took 6 hours for Richard to find a bail bondsman willing to take the risk, and Preston had to sign over the title to his Aston Martin as collateral. When he finally walked out of the courthouse at 4:00 p.m., he thought the worst was over. He just wanted to go home, shower, and hide. He pushed open the heavy wooden doors of the courthouse and stepped into the blinding flash of strobes. Preston over here. Why did you attack her? Are you a white supremacist, Preston? How does it feel to lose everything? The questions were like physical blows. Microphones were shoved into his face. A bottle of water was thrown from the crowd, splashing against his chest. Move! Get out of the way! Richard Hayes shouted, using his briefcase as a shield to get Preston to the waiting black SUV. They tumbled into the back seat, and the driver locked the doors. The paparazzi pounded on the windows as the car slowly pushed through the crowd. Preston curled into a ball covering his face. Take me home, Preston sobbed. Just take me home. The ride to Tribeca was silent. Preston turned on his phone for the first time in 24 hours. It vibrated so hard, it almost fell out of his hand. 432 missed calls. 200+ text messages. 50,000+ Instagram notifications. He opened his email. It was a bloodbath. American Express account suspended due to unusual activity. Equinox gym membership revoked effective immediately. Yale Alumni Association. Notice of review regarding your standing. Even his charity board positions were gone. He was radioactive. The car pulled up to the Kensington, his ultra-luxury building in Tribeca. This was his sanctuary, the one place they couldn't touch him. He jumped out of the car before it fully stopped, desperate for the safety of the lobby. He ran to the glass doors and tapped his key fob against the sensor. Beep, beep, beep. Red light. Access denied. Preston tapped it again. Beep, beep. Come on, he muttered, panic rising. He waved at the concierge, a man named Eduardo, who Preston had tipped hundreds of dollars over the years. Eduardo, buzz me in. Eduardo didn't buzz him in. Instead, he walked to the door, opened it just a crack, and stood in the gap. He wasn't smiling. Mr. Holloway, Eduardo said stiffly. My key isn't working. Let me in, Preston demanded. I can't do that, sir, Eduardo said. He handed Preston a white envelope. The co-op board held an emergency meeting via Zoom this morning. Under the objectionable conduct clause of the building bylaws, they voted unanimously to bar you from the premises. You're evicting me, Preston screamed. I own that apartment. It's worth $6 million. You can contact the management company to arrange a time to collect your personal effects, Eduardo said, reciting the script. But you cannot enter the building today. We have residents who are uncomfortable with your presence. Uncomfortable? I live here. Not anymore, sir. Please leave, or I have to call the police. Eduardo closed the door. The lock clicked. Preston stood on the sidewalk. It was starting to rain again. He had no job, no home, no access to his money. His car was collateral. His reputation was ash. He looked down at his phone. A new notification popped up. It was a push notification from a news app. Breaking Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, announces investigation into Flight 402 incident. Suspect Preston Holloway faces up to 20 years in federal prison for interference with flight crew. Preston dropped his phone. The screen shattered on the wet pavement. He looked up at the grey sky, letting the rain wash over his face. He was free on bail, but he was trapped in a prison of his own making. And somewhere flying first class over the Atlantic, Naomi Sterling was finally getting some sleep. The rain in London was softer than the rain at JFK, more of a gentle mist than a deluge. Inside the gilded halls of the Tate Modern, the atmosphere was electric. Naomi Sterling stood at the podium, the lights catching the subtle diamond stitching on her bespoke Savile Row suit, the same tailor Preston Holloway used to patronize. She was accepting the Global Innovator of the Year award. Ether Systems had not only revolutionized fuel filtration, but they had also just launched a clean water initiative in developing nations that was projected to save millions of lives. We often judge value by the packaging, Naomi said to the crowd of CEOs, diplomats, and royalty, her voice clear and resonant. We look at a sleek device, a fancy title, or a first-class ticket, and assume that is where the worth lies. But true power, true innovation, usually comes wrapped in something unassuming. It comes from the people you don't see coming, the ones you might ask to move so you can take their seat. A ripple of knowing laughter went through the crowd. The Flight 402 incident was legendary in business circles, how a cautionary tale taught in MBA ethics classes everywhere. Naomi smiled, a genuine, easy smile. She finished her speech, held up her award, and walked off stage to thunderous applause. She didn't think about Preston Holloway. She hadn't thought about him in months. He was just a speed bump in her rear-view mirror, a minor inconvenience on her road to changing the world. 3,000 miles away in New York City, the Port Authority bus terminal was loud, dirty, and smelled of diesel fumes and desperation. It was 3:30 a.m. Preston wiped down the grimy plastic counter of the Greyhound ticket booth. He wasn't wearing an Italian suit. He was wearing an ill-fitting polyester uniform shirt that was tight under the arms with a plastic name tag pinned crookedly to the pocket. It read, "Trainee." The federal charges had stuck. Interference with a flight crew is a felony that the government takes very seriously. He had served 18 months in a minimum security federal camp. It wasn't hard time, but it was enough to completely erase the man he used to be. When he got out, he was unemployable. The finance world treated him like a leper. His Ivy League degree was worthless. No compliance department in the world would approve hiring a felon famous for a racist, violent meltdown on an airplane. His friends had abandoned him. His ex-wives had sued him for back alimony, draining whatever assets the lawyers hadn't taken. He lived in a basement apartment in Queens that smelled of mildew, a far cry from the Tribeca penthouse with the river views. A bus from Cleveland pulled in its air brakes, hissing aggressively. A tired-looking woman with 3 screaming kids approached the window. "Ticket to Newark," she snapped, not looking at him. "That'll be $22.50, ma'am." Preston said, his voice flat and devoid of its former boom. "Can't you hurry up? My kids are hungry." Preston looked at her. For a split second, the old rage flared up. The urge to tell her who he was, to demand respect. But then he remembered the steel toilet in the holding cell. He remembered the judge's face. He remembered the rain on the sidewalk outside the courthouse. He swallowed the rage. It tasted like ashes. "Yes, ma'am." "Right away, ma'am." Above him, a greasy television screen, mounted in the corner of the waiting area, was tuned to CNN International. They were showing highlights from the awards ceremony in London. Preston stopped typing. He looked up. There she was. Naomi Sterling. She looked radiant, powerful, and untouchable. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read, "Billionaire philanthropist. Naomi Sterling changes the game." Preston looked at her. Then he looked down at his own hands, calloused from the cheap cleaning chemicals he had to use to mop the bathroom floors. The woman at the window tapped the glass impatiently with a quarter. "Hey, today, buddy." Preston flinched. He tore the ticket off the machine and slid it under the glass. "Safe travels," he whispered, not looking her in the eye. He went back to wiping the counter. The television droned on a window into a world he used to own. A world that had rejected him violently and permanently. He had tried to steal a seat he didn't deserve. Now he was just grateful to have a place to stand, even if it was behind dirty glass, watching the real titans fly by. The karma wasn't a sudden strike anymore. It was a slow, heavy weight that he would carry for the rest of his life. And that is the story of Preston Halloway and Naomi Sterling. It's a brutal reminder that in the age of smartphones and social media, your character is always on trial. Preston thought his net worth bought him the right to treat people like garbage. He learned the hard way that true power isn't about how loud you can scream at the flight attendant. It's about who you are when you think no one important is watching. He judged a book by its cover, and that book ended up closing the final chapter on his entire life. What did you think of Naomi's reaction? Did Preston deserve what he got, or was the punishment too harsh? Let me know down in the comments. I really want to hear your take on this. If you enjoyed this story and want more deep dives into real-world drama and karmic justice, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss a flight with us. Fly safe, everyone. And be kind. You never know who you're sitting next to.